morning, everyone. Welcome to the Spindle for Dynamics GP webinar this morning. So the idea of the presentation today is we're very much going to look at advanced document distribution around Dynamics GP. So we're trying to do lots more than just emailing out documents and look at it really more as a process and all the things that we can do around producing and distributing documents out of Dynamics GP. The way we're going to structure the demonstration this morning is we're going to start off with a little bit of PowerPoint going into the features of the software and the different things that you can do functionality-wise within it. And then we're actually going to go into Dynamics GP and print out some documents. So by the end of the demonstration, you should have a really good idea about the way that the solution works, but also the kind of things that it could do for your organization. In terms of time, we're looking at about 30 minutes for the demonstration today, and if anyone's got any questions, please feel free to pop them on the chat panel and I can get them answered either as we go through or I can save them all up for the end. Okay, so if we get started then, a little bit of background to Dracer as an organisation. We've got about 42,000 users across the world in about 42 different countries. So lots and lots of different organisations in lots of different countries using the software in lots of different verticals and industry types. The one common thing that everyone has is trying to do a little bit more around their document delivery. So more than just let's produce an invoice and send it out via email, which obviously we can do and we can fulfill within the software, but trying to look at that more as a process and saying, actually, what else can we do when we're producing that invoice and sending it out? Now, firstly, the way that Spindle Professional works is we create the document from Dynamics GP, and it will work across any documents from Dynamics GP. So it doesn't matter whether it's an invoice, a statement, a remittance, a purchase order. You can use it in as many different documents as you wish to. It will also work in other applications such as Excel or Word. You have to have it configured to work with those systems, but once it's configured, then it works exactly the same. Licensing-wise, it's licensed on a per user basis, not on a volume or the amount of documents you use it for basis. So really, Spindle is very much an all-encompassing product. So everything we go through today is included as in the Spindle application. If so whether you use all of it right now or in 6 months' time you think actually that part of it would be useful, then it's all functionality available for you. It's just a case of working with the guys at Nolan who can get that set up at the right time for you so you can make the most of the functionality. Now, creating your document or your batch of documents within Dynamics GP, and then you just print them off to Spindle Pro Auto. And Spindle very much sits as a print driver. So we're not changing the way that you're using GP. We're not changing the process that you're doing in terms of creating and sending documents. The idea is you just create your documents as you normally would do, and then you print them in the same way you print to maybe a HP printer in the corner of the office. You print to Spindle Professional as the print driver. Now, once you've printed off that batch of, say, 100 invoices and printed them off to Spindle, Spindle will then decide how that document should be delivered. So if we've got an email address for someone, we'll send it out via email. If we haven't got an email address, we'll automatically print it off to the printer. And if you still do faxing, we can bring faxing in as part of that. So the idea is if you printed off 100 invoices, you might get 85 that go out via email, and the other 15 appear on the printer ready to be sent out via the post. We take all the information from within GP. So if you've got an email address, obviously we're going to use that from within GP, and there's flexibility around which fields and which contacts that we pull through and send with the document. We can then apply our corporate stationery to the document. Now in its basic format, that's adding our overlays and backdrops to the document itself, and also within the actual email that we send. So with Spindle, you can create really nice looking HTML emails. HTML is the language that you get emails from Amazon and eBay on a regular occasion, all nicely branded with their corporate identity. So with Spindle, you can do exactly the same with your corporate identity. Quite often as organizations, we spend a lot of time and money creating really nice websites, really nice marketing material, and then when we send something out to finance, it's a bit of a plain text, "Dear Sir, Madam, please find attached a copy of your invoice." So with Spindle, we can create personalized emails using information from within GP, and we can put our stationery set and our logos and branding appropriate with that customer around it. Now, if you have different companies, different branding, different divisions within your organization, then Spindle can make sure that the right branding is used for the right customer, and it will do that automatically. If you've got international customers, so if you've got customers in the UK, but obviously we've got Europe on our doorstep. In Europe, everyone speaks different languages depending on which country you're dealing with. Therefore, Spindle can make sure that the appropriate language is used for the appropriate customer based on which country they're based within. So for example, if you printed out 100 invoices and 25 of them might be for customers in France, therefore the email template's written in French and your terms and conditions could be in French. You could have another 25 in Spanish for your Spanish customers, and then the remaining 50 could all be in the UK and US, to which you use your English-speaking email template. The key thing from a Spindle point of view is, from a user's perspective, all we've done is create the document, printed it to Spindle, and that's it. Spindle will decide which brand, which language, which stationery set, which terms and conditions, and so on can be added to each of the documents based on that individual customer's requirements. We can do things like password protect documents, and you can password protect any document. You can put a standardized password on the document, the PDF, or you can use a dynamic password. And by dynamic, we mean it's picking up a field from within GP and using that field in order to determine what that password is. So that means that you can have a unique password to each customer or supplier. We then finally can archive the document. So if we archive the document, we can archive onto your network, storing it in folder locations. And with Spindle, you can create the folder location, and they can be self-maintained. So for example, you could have folders for each customer. If you bring a new customer on board, Spindle will create it. If it's the same customer that you've previously dealt with, Spindle will just archive the document within it. If you have any other advanced points of archiving, such as things like CRM or SharePoint, then we can archive into those solutions as well. So the way Spindle works is we don't physically change the documents that's been created from Dynamics GP. We print it off to Spindle, and then Spindle will then decide how the document should look, how it should be delivered, where it should be archived. Now we can do all of these things at once. We can just do one of them. So for example, if you have a process internally where you always require a copy of the invoice to be printed, then you can have Spindle configured so that you print invoices to Spindle. Spindle sends them to the customer out via email, but at the same time prints a copy off on the printer, maybe even dictating which printer tray the paper comes out of, so if you have different colored paper and so on. And then at the same time we can then archive the document. The whole benefits of Spindle is really looking at all these processes and making it a very efficient process. So from a user perspective, all we do is create the document and we print it out. If you're still sending any paper-based documents, then obviously if we can send documents out by email, there's a huge cost saving that we can benefit from that. But really deciding that we can reduce human error and making it very fast, a very fast and fluid process for the users, but doing lots of different things off the back of it. We can do things such as send copies to people internally. So if we're sending out an invoice and you've got account managers or salespeople that are associated with that account that invoice is related to, then at the same time as sending the invoice out, Spindle will automatically send a copy to the account manager to say, well done, an order's been processed on one of your accounts. This can be taken all the way through to things like purchase orders for sending copies to project managers or site managers. It could be that we're running off a statement, and if the statement's overdue, because there's overdue invoices on that statement, then we send a copy to the salesperson or account manager to let them know one of their accounts is overdue. If the statement isn't overdue, then we just send a copy out to the customer, and obviously no copies needed to be sent to the account manager, so that isn't sent. But functionality-wise, it's really identifying if when you send a document out, if there's someone else within the organization who would benefit from it, then we can automate that process. So other common example would be credit notes. If a credit note's over a certain value, then we could send a copy to the FD, for example. As I mentioned, we can enhance the corporate identity. So with Spindle, we can really easily create HTML emails, all with your logos and branding within the emails. We can have sidebars and side messages, because we're sending finance documents out to our customers, but it's another opportunity to communicate with our customers at this point. So by communication, we could add in sidebars of new promotions, maybe events that we're running, lots of different things, and that's really easy to change. You don't even need to go back to the consultants and the support desk at Nolan each time you want to change it. It's something they can give you training on, and then you can quite easily change yourself. And finally, I would say most importantly is the attachment side of things. So with Spindle, there's 3 different types of attachments that you can create. You can create attachments within the document itself. So that's adding it onto the last page of whatever document you're sending. Common examples being, if you produce invoices, adding the terms and conditions of sale on the last page of the invoice. But using criteria, you can have different terms and conditions for different groups of customers, maybe different products, different customer types, different regions, for example, different locations, and Spindle will make sure the right terms and conditions goes on the right document. And by terms and conditions, it could be a promotional letter, it could be a payments method letter, anything that you want to, a standardized attachment you want to add on the last page of the document. It'll be wrapped up in a single PDF and obviously emailed out to the customer. You can then have an attachment as a separate attachment altogether. So that could be terms and conditions as a separate attachment. It could be a promotional letter, a leaflet. It could be delivery instructions if you're sending out a purchase order that will relate to the particular site that you're purchasing purchasing goods for. Then the specific delivery instructions can be picked up for that, and they'll be attached to the email, but not within the actual PDF itself. They will be attached as a separate PDF. On top of that, what we can then have is a dynamic attachment, and that's really where we become quite clever and we try and attach a document that only relates to the document we're sending. Most common example of that would be something like statements. So if we're sending out all of our statements and we've used Spindle to archive our invoices when we send them out, then at the same time as sending the statement out, Spindle can go and grab all of the invoices that relate to that particular statement and attach them to the email as well. So quite often when you send statements out, you get a couple of emails back from customers saying, can you send me a copy of the invoice? So what we're doing in this case is preempting that. Just by creating our statements and printing them to Spindle, Spindle will then send them out by email, but also at the same time go and collate all the invoices that relate to that statement and attach them to the statement as well. So what you end up with is a statement with all the invoices attached, with an overdue stamp if the statement's overdue. Obviously if it isn't, we wouldn't, and if it is overdue, sending a copy to the salesperson at the same time so they've got a copy of it. All these kind of functionality is really easy to achieve. That's where you work with Nolan and the consultants who would get this set up for you. So from a user perspective, all you need to do in this terms for a statement is create the document and print it to Spindle. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll go in and we'll actually create and print some documents. So Spindle works across any versions of Dynamics GP. I'm using an older version here as we're in the process of updating our demo kit at the moment, but we work with the very latest version. We can work with even older versions of the version I'm using here. So if I create some documents, I'm just going to print off some invoices to start with. I'll reprint them in case I've printed them before, and then if we just select a document range of invoices that we want to print out. If I then print those documents up, and I'm going to print them to a printer with Spindle Pro Auto being my printer around there. So not changing the process that you're using Dynamics GP, working exactly the same way that you're using it at the moment. In terms of email clients, we work with lots of different email clients, anything from Outlook, going from older versions all the way through to Office 365, and we have an Exchange connector for that. Maybe that you work with something like Lotus Notes. It could be that you work with some of the online email systems, such as Gmail for Business or something, some of those type solutions. If that's the case, Spindle can work with all of them. You can do things like override the sender's details. So instead of coming from me, Thomas Bedford, an account, it can come from an account at email address. And that can be specific per document type. So you could have account at for your sales documents, but for your purchasing documents, you could have purchasing at email address. So it can be really, really quite flexible. So we can see that my invoices are starting to come out now. They're coming into my drafts folder in Outlook. If you use Outlook, then documents can go into drafts and you can resend them out of drafts after that. Alternatively, you could just send them straight out, to which they'll appear in your sent items. The first thing you'll notice is you've got a very nice looking HTML email document. So this is where you can have things like sidebars of information. So in this case, I'm talking about new pricing or case studies. Could be that we're coming up to a bank holiday and you want to put in your opening hours. Got all your logos and branding within the document itself. We're populating it with information from Dynamics GP. So in this case, invoice and then the invoice number for the customer name, and then we're also pulling through the customer account number as well. Got the contact name in here, so each of the emails are going to be personalized to the person we're sending it to. And then we've got a copy of the invoice attached. So if we have a look at a copy of the invoice attached here, it's the same physical text that's been produced from Dynamics GP, but at the same time we've added our overlays and backdrops to the document to enhance the look of the document, and then finally adding on our terms and conditions of sale on the very last page. Now obviously as we go through our different invoices that have been sent out, what I've done is a slight change on my invoices. So you'll notice that for our Canadian customers we're picking up a different data set which has a stationary set for talking about Canada, and just doing a bit of a backdrop of the Canada district state line on that. And as we go through that, we're picking up different stationary sets. So I've got one here for, if we open it up, for Western Canada. As you can see, we've got a different backdrop for that. That's kind of us just being a little bit clever around the backdrops of the states. However, it can be different brands, different divisions, different languages, as we said, for backdrops, and that's the kind of the idea of the changes within it. From a user's perspective, we just create the document and print it. If I then come further up, we'll see that we've now sent out some internal emails. In this case, dear Gregory, well done, an invoice has been processed on one of your accounts. Now, what I've actually done is archive the document to SharePoint. If you don't use SharePoint, then you would just get the invoice attached as a PDF, as the customer has in their case. If you do use SharePoint, then we can put in the link to SharePoint of where the document has been archived to. So flick through that, and we can now see, but just by clicking on the link, it's taken me to the SharePoint location of the actual invoice. It stops us sending lots of PDFs around the organization. However, like I said, if you don't use SharePoint, then we would just go and grab the document and you'd have it attached as a PDF. Just some top level information in the email about what the order was for, and the value of it and so on. And as you can see, that's an internal email, so very different looking to our external email that we sent to the customer. We can then go and archive the document at the same time. Now, obviously, if we printed a copy, that will appear on the printer for any that we don't have an email address for. But we would have archived the document anyway, so I've just created a GP folder here for sales documents, coming into invoices and statements. If I come into invoices, I've then got a customer folder. As I mentioned, Spindle will maintain this folder structure for you. So if you bring a new customer on board, you don't need to create a folder for them. It will automatically be created. If the folder already exists, Spindle will just archive the document within it. So really, really straightforward and really easy to maintain. What this does is give access to other people within the organization who have access to this folder structure, then subsequently have access in order to view documents back. Now, if I go through and we do some other documents on here, so what I've done for invoices works exactly the same for purchase orders, credit notes, any other documents that you produce from Dynamics GP. Another example to show you would be something like a statement, because what we're doing for statements is exactly what we've done for invoices, but we've done a little bit more around it. So if we display here, and if I just print some documents out and just select some statements we're going to do. So we've kind of taken what we do for invoices and we've been a bit more advanced. So in this case, if I print, and again, I'm going to print to my printer being Spindle Pro Auto. And Spindle will now automatically deliver my statements out. So if we give this a second, we can now see that my statements are starting to come out here. So they're starting to tick through. Now, everything in Spindle is set up on a document-by-document basis, which means we can have a different email template and different set of automations for our statements than we do for our purchase invoices or our sales invoices, our credit notes, our remittance advices, and so on. So for statements, we're putting through things like the aging information, whether the debt's current, 30, 60, 90 days overdue, 180 days, hopefully no one has too many of them. We've even pulled through the minimum payment value, so that we've populated that within the actual email itself. And if the statement's overdue, if we open up a copy of the statement, we've gone and stamped overdue across it. So if we have a look, overdue here. So we've got our statement here and we've stamped overdue across it because this particular statement's overdue. Obviously, if it isn't overdue, they wouldn't get that attached. No terms or conditions on this statement, but it is a multi-page statement as well. So you can have a different stationery set on your first page than you do on your subsequent page. What we've then gone and done is we've gone and attached a copy of the invoice that relates to that particular statement. So got a copy of the statement's gone out, got a copy of the invoice attached as well. So all my statements have gone out. Again, they can be different brands, different languages, different divisions associated with different divisions, and so on. What we then have at the top are our salesperson's emails. So if they're not overdue, we don't send a copy to the salesperson. However, if the statement is overdue, we can now send a copy to the salesperson as well to say invoices on your account are now overdue. They can get a copy of the statement and invoices attached. However, alternatively, they can see a copy of the statement within SharePoint. And if I go into SharePoint, to see if this has been archived yet. Yeah, it should have been. They can see a copy of the statement as well. So like I say, if you don't use SharePoint, what you'll get attached is a copy of the statement and a copy of the relevant invoices that are overdue, and they've automatically been emailed out to the salesperson. So as I mentioned, that's the statement side of things. Now, statements takes it a little bit further than what we're doing with invoices, purchase orders, credit notes, and so on. But exactly the same principles apply. So everything documents set up, as I mentioned, on a document by document basis. So what you want to have documents have Spindle integrated with, and what you want to happen to those documents can be really flexible. So if you wanted extra copies of invoices printed to a printer, but for statements you just want them to be sent out by email, then they're exactly the kind of things that you configure. Those statements would have been archived as well. So if I come to my C drive here and my archive for GP sales statements, we can see that all my statements have been archived within the relevant folders. You have lots of flexibility over things like naming criteria. So in this case, I'm calling it statement and then the date. That's the date the statement was created. Alternatively, you could use lots of other information around that if you wanted to. The final thing I'll show you is there are things that you can do within the software to update it itself. So mainly that email template, and you can do things around actually updating that email template and being able to change the actual email template itself. So these sidebars, these messages that we put within the email template, if I come into it here and we edit one, here's another example of a different email template that I have set up. Within Spindle itself, we've got a HTML editor. So again, this will be where you can work with Nolan and the guys who can get this set up for you. But the idea being is with these sidebars of information, you can change them on a regular occasion if you wish, or bi-monthly if you wanted to. So things like new pricing and case studies, we've got an example of a stationery set with it in here. And if we wanted to change that new pricing to maybe new opening, help if I could type, new opening hours, and so on. As you can see, it's very much like changing a Word document. From that point onwards, we can then just save our new email template, and then next time we send our statements out, we've got a new updated sidebar and side messages. So a really popular way that people use Spindle, as I mentioned, come December, very popular for people to put their Christmas opening hours on there when they're opening bank holidays, last order dates for delivery before Christmas, events and so on, loads and loads of different things. And just another way that you can communicate with your customers, because obviously when we're sending finance documents, often they're looked at and signed off by people of decision-making power within our customer and supplier base. So therefore, if we can get extra information in front of them, that can be really, really valuable. So that's everything that we were looking to go through from a demonstration point of view on Spindle today. The final thing that we'll mention before we wrap up is really talking about the licensing side of things. So it's licensed on a per user basis. So anyone who needs a license to be able to print to Spindle and requires to produce a document and print it to the Spindle Pro print driver, they would require a license of Spindle itself. So it doesn't have to match your Dynamics GP licensing. It's really just the amount of users that are required to print to Spindle that would need a license for the software. If you have an idea about how many users you require, just have a think about that, and then the account managers, whether Angela or Taranvir at Nolan, can follow up with you and give you a quote on the software based on the number of users you require. They are banded, so if you obviously if you want one user, or if you wanted 5 users, 5 users isn't 5 times the cost of 1 user. It's all quite scalable. So, but if you have a chat with your account manager at Nolan, they'll be able to obviously answer any questions on that. Okay, so we haven't had any questions as we go through. So what we'll do is we'll kind of wrap up the demonstration there. So firstly, I'd like to thank everyone to take their time out today to have a look at Spindle Professional and join the webinar. I hope you found it useful and kind of giving you some ideas about the advanced things that you can do around document delivery within Dynamics GP. If you do have any questions, then please contact your account manager at Nolan. If not, I'm sure they'll be in touch with you in order to follow up. So I'd like final point to thank everyone for their time today. I hope you all enjoy the rest of the day. And like I say, any questions or anything like that, obviously just let us know. Thank you very much. Cheers. Bye-bye.